And it is time once again for another AEW Dynamite review here on the MrWarrenHayes Show. Hello there, I'm Warren. Hope you're having a great week so far. It is Thursday. We're just about done with said week. Hope it reached all of your hopes and dreams. Or contributed to them. All right, and if it didn't, I'm sorry. Hope I can make this week a little better as we break down this past week's AEW Dynamite. In fact, the one that happened just yesterday, since this is Thursday, February 27th. We'll be talking about the Dynamite that occurred on February 26, 2025, from Oceanside, California, at the Frontwave Arena. I don't know. I think this might be the first time AEW ever went to this venue. Another good crowd for AEW. When I say good, I mean hot, excited. Look, a lot of people were complaining. We're calling it a big fat L that AEW was running smaller venues, and it's hard to not tie that into the idea that things aren't maybe going as smoothly as one would have hoped. You're going from selling out huge venues, big arenas, or at least close to selling them out, and now having to run these smaller buildings. Well, we've discussed at length the multiple reasons that led to that, but you can't say that the transition to the smaller venues has not been a good idea. At least when it comes to crowd energy. Like, the crowds over the past couple of weeks, both on AEW and Collision, have been very, very good. I say couple of weeks. Over the last few weeks, multiple occasions, Look, we talked about it here multiple times, right? You have you get smaller crowds in bigger buildings, and that ruins the energy of a crowd. But if you get the same size of smaller crowd and pack them into a smaller venue where the building is then packed regardless, where, you get 3,000 people in a, 3,500, 4,000 seat arena or venue, well, then the energy is completely different than if you're doing this at the fucking United Center. So the energy was good again last night, and this for 3,005 tickets distributed according to WrestleTix. That's as of yesterday. This was the last update that WrestleTix gave for this show before the show itself. So, per usual, WrestleTix doesn't update the final counts before I do these reviews, before I record the reviews. So I don't have the final count, but 3,005, the setup was for 3,400, which is, actually pretty good. The building, if I'm not mistaken, the Frontwave Arena seats about 4,000. So, that's good. And there's one thing we have to note is that slowly, and I am not going to sit here and tell you that we're suddenly back to levels we were at, 2-3 years ago when it comes to AEW, but well, maybe not during the pandemic. You know what I mean? They're still struggling attendance-wise for the TV tapings, but the attendance is not as dire as it was just a couple of months ago. In late, in summer 2024, late 2024, attendance sometimes was a nail-biting situation where you're like, oh, okay, there's only 1,800 people and that got a ticket to the show, and we're like 3 days before the show, what the hell is going on? That kind of stuff. Now we're seeing a pattern where we're hovering closer to the 3,000 and, heading up. I think the trend overall is positive. I won't say it's like going upwards, but it's positive. I think there's something to be said that there's an improvement in regards to the online, not the online ticket sales, just like ticket sales in general. So that's an interesting little note to keep in mind. I think things are slowly showing improvement. I wouldn't say that we suddenly need to crow about how, we're so back. No, it's still, the changes are still minute. These are not sudden sweeping changes that are affecting live attendance to the point where AEW has to consider going back to bigger venues again, running them on a regular basis. No. We're definitely not there yet, but it's not as dire as it was. It's definitely not as dire as it was on that front. Before we get into the review proper, I want to talk about stories. I want to talk about stories in AEW. AEW has always had a complicated relationship with storytelling and the perception of storytelling amongst fans as well. We know the drill at this point, how, for the longest time, AEW had the reputation of, just putting on great matches, but there was never any stories. And somehow this was perceived as a negative. This was perceived as something bad, that your matches needed to have stories, and you can go back and listen to any review I did regarding AEW, and I will agree that you do need matches. Your matches do need builds, right? I think there's always something fundamental in which I disagreed with how the word story was used and what the expectation was, because a story in pro wrestling is told essentially in the ring, and I have trouble breaking away from that. If the story ultimately that you're telling in the ring isn't good or isn't connecting, well, I don't care how many angles you've run to get to this point. You're not pulling it off, right? But that's a whole other discussion. I mostly want to focus on this idea on how much AEW has changed since the days of, they don't tell any stories, to now, where now on the show, and Joe Lanza has been pointing this out for a while, but I finally come around to it, and it's a thought that's always stayed with me. But now in AEW, every match has a story. Like, look at the Revolution card that we have so far, right? Everything that we know that it's happening on a pay-per-view, on the pay-per-view, has a very clear, very well-built story, okay? And I don't want to sound like I'm complaining about the stories or the angles or the build to these matches. I think they've all been very good. We'll even get to the Death Riders in a second, and Adam Copeland. We're going to get to that in a second, and in a second, in a few minutes, because what I have to say about that might shock you. But Kenny Omega and Konosuke Takeshita, that has a story. Will Ospreay and Kyle Fletcher, that has a story. Swerve and Ricochet, that has a story, and elaborate stories, not just throwing angles at each other, like elaborate, well thought out, well constructed pro wrestling tales, right? That are leading us to this, and I think it's adding to MJF Hangman, right? I think it's everything that's happening on the pay-per-view has stories, and you're probably saying to me right now, like, Warren, well, of course, you're doing a pay-per-view, you want your big matches on the pay-per-view to have stories. That's what pay-per-views are about. They're about culminations of angles and feuds and that are built to feel hot, so that people will purchase the actual show. And I don't disagree with you, but look, even Harley Cameron, who had a throwaway match on last night's Dynamite, her match still had a story. Willow Nightingale running in has a story that they've been building, and it's been well built, and I have nothing to complain about that. I think they're doing a really good job connecting the dots and making things feel important, special, that they're a part of this greater of a greater canon within the company, if that makes sense. And I've gotten to the point where there are so many stories everywhere, I'm kind of missing the days where AEW would just throw some matches together and put them on TV, where it's just like Tomohiro Ishii would just show up one day and have a match. Mystico would show up and have a match. Mance Warner would show up, and AEW has always had that tradition regardless of what the naysayers wanted to have you believe. AEW has always had a tradition of bringing in people that you didn't quite know who they were, and or unless you were really plugged into the scene, or unless you were a big time wrestling fan. It goes all the way back to Cody's TNT title run, where he had the open challenge, and we brought in we brought in Eddie Kingston, we brought in Ricky Starks, we brought in Warhorse to all have matches. And 2 out of those 3 guys got jobs with the company afterwards. So I never quite understood. No, this is not true. I do understand why, but I never quite supported the idea of AEW losing that part of its identity, of losing this idea where you could just have someone come in, throw a match together, and just have something cool for a moment, right? And I understand why they stopped doing it, and that's because of all of the WWE brained dummies out there who positioned themselves as these great critiques, these great knowledgeable humans about pro wrestling, who just tried to find any scrap to latch on to show why AEW wasn't doing a good job for such and such reason, which then led to the idea that AEW only does random matches. We don't know who these people are. They don't do stories, etc., etc. And the more they talked about it, the more it got into AEW's ears, and eventually AEW became a promotion that was very highly focused on stories, to the point that 2 years ago, they lost a substantial amount of their audience due to stories and sports entertainment. And I really don't know why they did that, because when they were doing these great matches, these matches, right? Look, let's think about some of the ones that really caused controversy back then, that really got the pundits upset. One of the ultimate classics, and probably the archetype of, they don't tell stories, what a random match, was Kenny Omega versus El Hijo del Vikingo, right? I think that's a classic one where people are like, oh, sure, it's a cool match, but what's the story? That's always what you'd hear. Will Ospreay, when he was coming in originally to do some one-shots before he signed with the company, it was the same thing. Oh, why is he coming in? What's the story? Jun Akiyama, when he came in to fight Eddie Kingston. Minoru Suzuki, when he showed up to fight Danielson. Bandito and Danielson, all this shit, right? All this stuff. I was sitting back, and they'd bring Mystico in, and I'd sit back, I'd crack my knuckles, and I'd be like, hell yeah, let's go. AEW, when they do that, when they would promote these one-shot matches with people that you might not be familiar with, but that the wrestling fan did, felt like they were doing something for the wrestling fan, right? It felt like it was, for a time, AEW felt like it was a celebration of professional wrestling, because all these great connections were being made. We were flying people in, bringing people up from the indies or whatever, and just having these one-shots, these cool little one-shots where they have a thing, and it could turn out to be a tryout, could not, whatever, it doesn't matter. But it just ended up being like a place where you never knew who was going to show up. You never quite knew, and you could be surprised. But we've spent the better part of 2 decades previously under the vision of one man's vision of pro wrestling, who has unfortunately dictated how professional wrestling is perceived today. And it is assumed that it's the only way to do pro wrestling, and it's the only right way, and it's the only way to get things done. So when you play around with the formula and you try to cater to wrestling fans as opposed to WWE fans, when you go out and you cater to wrestling fans, well, people who have watched nothing but WWE all their lives end up sort of shrugging and going, what the hell is this? What am I watching? Because they don't understand, because they've never seen something different like this. And instead of being open to it, instead of being excited about it, instead of being curious and trying to understand, oh, well, why is this match between Eddie Kingston and this Jun Akiyama fellow important? Like, why is this significant for Eddie? Or who is this Vikingo? And he's fighting Kenny Omega, like the top guy in the company. Like, who is this guy, kind of thing? And instead of searching out, understanding, it's shut down. Like, it's shut down, and not just shut down. The shields are put up. We start running some sort of defense where it's like, no, we reject this, right? This is terrible. All they do is cool matches, but there's no stories, which I always thought was silly, right? And, AEW pivoted towards doing more stories, to the point that there's stories up and down the card. There is nothing that happens without some kind of something being woven into it, right? Some kind of bigger purpose to, I'm assuming, quell some of this critique that they would get, right? To so that these pundits who didn't like the product in the first place and probably didn't even watch it would get off their back and sort of praise them instead and say, oh, well, good job for all the stories, AEW. And what have I said all along when AEW started doing that? When AEW started dropping its best attributes, the things that really made it different, what did I keep saying? Like, stop catering to these people, Tony Khan, AEW, stop catering to these people because they don't watch the product. And they're not going to watch the product just because you start having more stories. They're going to move the goalposts. They're going to find something else to bitch about once you start countering what they're complaining. They'll find something else to complain about. Started complaining about AEW making money and the media deal. Well, when the media deal fell through, did they shut up about it? No, they continued. They moved the goalposts again. There's always something else to complain about. These very clear, very evident haters who do not watch the product and are not interested in it, in giving it a fair critique, are never going to be on your side. They're never going to sit back and scratch their chin and go, correct indeed. Yes. AEW, good job. Good job on stories. Good job on your big media deal. Congratulations. No, they're going to keep on finding ways to pick it apart for multiple reasons, either because they're bad faith, either because they're running a grift, either because they're co-opted by the other company, or a combination of three. Of any of those three, all three, whichever three. So, AEW has stories up and on the card, and they're still not happy. They're still not tuning in. They're still not praising the show. There will always be something to complain about, whether it's like, well, they just do matches for Dave Meltzer or whatever, like whatever fucking stupid ass reason that they'll come up with. There'll always be a reason, right? So this transition towards all stories all the time is ultimately good, because I, for the most part, enjoy the way things have been done. Because I feel like a lot of the stories that they do run still maintain that pro wrestling feel about it, right? Like the, Hangman and MJF I think is extremely successful at that. Takeshita and Omega as well. Now it's become, we've got a title in the conversation. So now there's that level that's added to it, which is very pro wrestling. When you do things where your wrestlers have amnesia, I know it's not that, but bear with me here. Where your wrestlers have amnesia and they don't remember who they are, They believe they've had a mental break and believe that they're, a silent film star or, a diva from the 50s or whatever. Then I'm kind of like, these are not the stories that I feel work the best in a pro wrestling context. That's, of course, personal taste. That's criticism. That's what I do. That's what I'm here for, right? But overall, I think AEW does a good job at weaving all these stories together. I think they've done a good job making their big programs feel important. But I'm going to tell you, I miss the days of guys and gals just showing up, having a match, and hitting the bricks. Now everything has to have a video package, and we have to explain. And I don't know. Maybe it's just me because I have that natural curiosity. Maybe it's because I have this propensity to learn, to ask questions, to wonder, like, okay, what is going on here? Who is this person? And that makes me unbothered, even excited when outsiders start popping in on AEW. But, I wish there was more of that in wrestling fandom these days. I think that's something that we've lost a lot of. Just curiosity, open-mindedness. Everything is, lines in the sand that you cannot cross. I think it's about us versus them. It's not even a question of, enjoying pro wrestling. Everything is a fight now. But nonetheless, I kind of wish that AEW would listen less to the detractors and more to their fan base, who is very receptive to a lot of the things they're doing now, by the way. Don't get me wrong. But I still feel that there's a lot of attention that is being scooped up by people who ultimately will never contribute anything positive to the perception of AEW. And we're trying to please those people instead of trying to please the people who've been there from the start. The people who maybe we've lost those people along the way. I think we have because, viewership is down on TV. We talked about the arena attendance and so on and so forth. I think the original core of people who were excited and hopeful for AEW, I think they're gone. I think there's still ways to win them back. And it's not by having a show that is just top to bottom stories and contrived in that way that doesn't feel quite as organic as it used to. I don't think that's the way to get those people back. That's just how I think about it. That's how I feel about it. I'd be okay with more random matches. I would actually like more random matches on AEW. But hey, let's go right ahead. Let's start talking about this show. Why don't we start right off with the main event? Because I think the main event was the more interesting. I think it was first of all, it was unquestionably the best match of the show, and I think was had some good little implications. I just want to talk about the match because I really thought the match was very good. Konosuke Takeshita. Don't run out of breath, Warren. All you're doing is sitting down and talking. Pace yourself. Konosuke Takeshita defeated Orange Cassidy to retain the AEW International Championship. I still think it's silly that Takeshita is the guy who has to fight for his spot at Revolution. I still think this whole story that they started at Grand Slam or this angle, whatever you want to call it, I don't think it was well thought out. I think it was kind of dumb. Where Kenny Omega challenges Takeshita, remember this, on the Grand Slam, on the same show. Kenny Omega challenged Konosuke Takeshita to a match for the AEW International Championship. And then shortly thereafter, they're showing graphics saying, oh, well, there's going to be a mini tournament. The winner of Roderick Strong versus Orange Cassidy is going to have a chance for the international title against Konosuke Takeshita, who will then go on to fight And the winner of that match will go on to fight Kenny Omega at Revolution, which is bonkers. Because first of all, you just set up the match. And you're like, okay, this is cool for Revolution. Because you know that's what's going to happen. And then you set up the match with Orange Cassidy. And that telegraphs the finish. Where you're like, well, Orange Cassidy's not winning this. Plus, Takeshita, the champion, is the guy who has to fight for his spot at the pay-per-view. And those who said, oh, no, Warren, they didn't present it that way. They sure as hell presented it last night. They sure as hell presented it that way. When word for word, Excalibur at some point said, the winner of this match will get an opportunity to face Kenny Omega at Revolution. Go back, watch the tape if you don't believe me. During the match, maybe even at the start of the match, the opportunity for the winner of this match was to go and fight Kenny Omega at Revolution. I understand Kenny's the top guy, don't get me wrong. It's weird that your champion is chasing the challenger, is what I'm saying. And this match was so much fun. I thought it was a really, really strong match. Orange Cassidy, of course, like as he does in a lot of his matches, gets the silliness out of the way early on in the match with the shit with the glasses and whatnot. And then we get these fast exchanges between the two, which is really cool until Takeshita lands a big elbow that puts him firmly in control of the match for a while. Orange Cassidy in this match tries to pull off his satellite DDT, but Takeshita blocks it. He lifts him up into a suplex position, which Cassidy reverses into a Stun Dog Millionaire attempt, but that is also blocked by Takeshita, who grabs him and just reverses into a Blue Thunder Bomb, which was awesome. Just a terrific sequence between the two. Takeshita in this match was such a great base for Orange Cassidy's nimble, fast-paced offense. It truly was tremendous. Not unlike Psychosis and Rey Mysterio Jr. or Beast Mortos and Hologram, right? This is exactly how this was set up. Orange Cassidy doing, nimble, flippy-do shit off of a base, a big, strong guy like Takeshita. It was legitimately tremendous. And I love the story of this match where Takeshita is just, he's prepared. He's on another level. He had everything read for Orange Cassidy. He was able to read everything. He was ready to he was blocking his Cassidy's offense. He was reversing out of it. Like, he did his homework, right? They go out on the floor. There's a beach break on the commentary table. Back in the ring, Orange Cassidy finally lands an orange punch, but then Takeshita smartly rolls out of the ring, which leads to Orange Cassidy landing a diving DDT, which was tremendous. Back in the ring, Cassidy finally hits a Stun Dog Millionaire, but it's followed up by a bastard driver by Takeshita, who holds on to Orange Cassidy, usually to follow up with a German suplex. But as he's being lifted, Orange Cassidy reverses that into a destroyer, which was awesome. Was it a destroyer or a code red? I think it was a code red, come to think of it. And that led to the closest kick out by Takeshita, to the point that I was like, oh shit, they're really doing this. That's what I was thinking. But no, none of that. Takeshita wins with the burning fire, right? The spinning suplex thing. Burning fire. Why can I never remember the name of the move? Anyway, look, I gave this match a 4 stars. I thought it was excellent. I thought it truly was excellent. And after the match, well, the heels celebrate in the ring. They mock Orange Cassidy with the glasses and whatnot. There was a whole thing throughout the match with Don Callis as well involved. A great finish. A great finish. A great match. Omega didn't show up. There was none of that. It was just a dominant performance by the current champion to establish that he is a strong champion. he's got his shit scouted. He knows what he's doing. Like a guy like Orange Cassidy, who is a tremendous, or who was a tremendous international champion, has nothing on this guy. It makes you understand, a match like this makes you understand that Takeshita is truly on another level, and he is on Kenny Omega. He probably has everything he needs to take on Kenny Omega and have him put up a fight. I'm really excited for this match. Like, I'm ridiculously excited for this match at Revolution. I think it has the potential to be one of the best of the year. I think it's fair to say that that's the floor to this match. And we'll do a proper preview once we get closer to the show. But I'm not convinced that Kenny Omega is winning that one. I'm not convinced Kenny Omega is winning the match. I think there's a strong case to be made for Konosuke Takeshita still holding on to the championship. But then I think it all hinges a lot on contract situations, but we'll talk about that at the preview. Stop trying to sucker me into talking about things I don't want to talk about today. I know what you're up to. So I think it was I thought it was a great match. Check it out. I think it's a lot of fun. Good TV match. Be hard pressed to find something better. Let's go back to the top of the show since I got my main review point out of the way. I don't have many deep thoughts on the show. I don't think. We'll see as we go along here. I thought the show was solid overall. Solid show, continuing all these builds to all these stories. I mean, it's good stuff. But I don't think it's a particularly remarkable show, but it's a good show. In fact, look, we have to acquiesce that recently Dynamites, but particularly Collisions, have been very good. They have good to very good. Something's been clicking, things have been coming together, and I've been enjoying the shit out of Collision recently, since the start of the year, easily. And Dynamite has a little more ups and downs for me, but overall has also been a better product. And that's kind of how I feel. It's like it's a good show. It's a good show, and the show starts off with all three commentators just standing in front of the audience, and we're not standing there. We're not at the table. We're just standing with the audience in the back. And I'm like, oh, see, again, a little something different that I like. You see your commentary table. They hype up the show. They're standing up. You've got the audience cheering behind them. I'm like, I like this. This is just a little different than what we typically see. Adam Copeland is already in an ambulance. All right. Because he comes out and he says, hey, Moxley, your ride has arrived. So, okay. Why don't we knock that out of the way? Because I sort of teased my feelings about it later in the show. We'll do the whole Death Rider stuff, and then I'm all over the place with the review today. It's all right. We're talking about what I want to talk about first instead of doing it in any particular order. Okay, fine. It's not as if he can do anything about it. It's already recorded. So Claudio is he's at some point with the Death Riders, and he basically he takes objection to the fact the Death Riders are upset to begin with that Pac was taken out with a concerto. And there was a lot of emphasis by commentary that Pac was the first domino to fall, right? That he's been taken out, and that this is serious business now. If Adam Copeland has taken out members of the Death Riders, well, now the Death Riders are in trouble and they're showing weakness. And Claudio Castagnoli's backstage with the rest of the Death Riders, and he's speaking in one of the 17 languages he speaks. I think was it German or Italian? I don't remember. I just I can tell the difference between the two. I just don't remember. I think it was German, right? I think it was speaking in German. And basically he has a chilling message for Adam Copeland, basically saying, oh, you're hunting us. No, I'm hunting you. So later on in the show, we see Castagnoli walking around backstage, like looking for Adam Copeland. He goes, he looks behind the thing. He's just like extending his neck, which of course leads to Adam Copeland popping out of nowhere and attacking Claudio when they brawl into the building. And Wheeler Yuta then shows up to defend Claudio, and they start putting the chairs to Copeland, and they set him up for a concerto when suddenly Jay White's music hits. Jay White then comes out, basically distracts the Death Riders, which allows Copeland enough time to grab a chair and swing it at Yuta. He spears Castagnoli. Marina Shafir jumps in, and she starts choking out Copeland, but she gets taken out as well. More chair shots followed to the Death Riders, and Copeland then starts setting up a concerto. Well, first of all, he concertos Claudio, right? And then he sets up a concerto on Marina. And you think he's going to do it. Oh my God, is he going to take out Marina Shafir? But before he can do anything, Willow Nightingale's music hits, and she comes to the ring, and she's looking good. She's got a very good outfit on. Very good. I was looking at tugging on the collar a little bit. It's like, it's getting a little hot in here, huh? And she grabs a chair and she concertos Marina Shafir, which is 100% in correlation with everything they've been doing over the past. Well, this goes back to a couple of pay-per-views ago, right? It goes back to World's End, if I'm not a couple of pay-per-views, but it goes back to World's End, right? Which is when Marina Shafir was trying to get involved in the main event, and then Willow ran out to take her out, or to brawl with her. And then over the past couple of weeks, this has been simmering, right? Where the Death Riders have been taking out Willow to sort of take over her interview time, which has been tremendous. So Willow's had enough, and she's like, all right, well, fuck you. So big time members of the Death Riders get taken out, and in the meantime, you've got Jon Moxley, who's trying to come through the crowd to cross the barricade, but Jay White is like, come on, brother. Like, he's running defense, keeping Moxley at bay, and he's panicking. He's like, holy shit, all my army's being taken out. And that's tremendous stuff. And they get thrown into the last shot you see is of them being packed into the ambulance and being driven away as Copeland, Willow, and Jay White look on. And for the first time since they started doing this Death Rider angle, I'm like, finally, we've got something. This is good. Like, this is actually good. I thought this was, without a doubt, the most interesting thing that they've done in this entire angle so far. To have these three people who all have issues with various members of the Death Riders finally come together and become the resistance to Mox's crew, which is something that we had been waiting for how long? That we're like, well, who's going to step up? Well, finally, these are the people who step up. And adding Willow into that, I think is like the perfect touch. I think it's the perfect touch. She's huge baby face, beloved by the fans, instant rallying behind anything she does, right? They've built this one up really well. See, nice little story again. Don't get me wrong. I'm not bitching, but they built it up really, really well, solidly. so that this moment felt meaningful. You know, especially since Marina's running around taking fools out right and left, right? It's Willow. Willow is the girl who has Marina Shafir's number. I enjoyed the hell out of this. Yeah, I still think overall the Death Rider stuff is not great, but this was the most interesting thing they've done so far. Now it feels like it has a pulse. Now it feels like Moxley's in danger. So what's he going to do? This is where it becomes really interesting. What is going to be, because the one thing that they're consistent here on is that the concerto, you have to, all of these people are going to be away for a while because the concerto is like this incredibly dangerous move. So they're going to be out selling the injury for a while. So now how is Mox going to retaliate? That's the question. How is Mox going to fight back? What's going to be his next step here? Is he just going to go at it himself? Is he going to recruit more people? Like now it's like, okay, now we have something that was missing in this whole Death Rider thing, and that is intrigue. Now we have something intriguing. We have something to sink our teeth into. Now the angle gets interesting. I'm not saying that it's suddenly saving everything that happened. I'm not saying that that I'm anywhere close to being excited at the idea of Adam Copeland and Jon Moxley fighting. Like it's still not a program that I'm that speaks to me. But at least this felt interesting. And I think by adding other elements, different elements in AEW to this, people who have crowd connections, people who are not stale, I think this is good. Makes a lot of sense to me. Begs the question, what happened? Why has FTR been kicked out of this program? Why isn't rated FTR still coming after the Death Riders? I'm really curious to know what happened. Because boy, Dax was pumped up about doing this trio with Edge, and they pivoted away from that. As far as I know, did we get a proper explanation? Did the FTR go, hey bro, we can't do this anymore? They can't be injured. They can't be running an injury angle because FTR was on the show doing something else. It really makes you wonder. It's curious. Anyway, that was a lot of fun. Don't get me wrong. I'm still keeping the Death Riders angle at arm's length. I'm not suddenly fully invested. I still don't care for it much. Just to be very clear. Anyway, back to the proper order of the show, I guess. Get MJF, who is he has a little vignette. He's getting his ankle tattoo removed. The one that he had when he made his big babyface comeback. Remember that? Bet on yourself with the poker chip, AEW, and all of that. He had done it on his calf. And you remember, those of you who are regular viewers, watchers, listeners, you remember when I was sitting here talking and saying, hey, we haven't seen that tattooer for a while. You know, it's pretty convenient that he put it in a spot that would always be covered up by his boots. We'd probably have to see that tattoo again at some point, but you know, I was insinuating it was fake. Turns out I was right. Oh, Max. Yeah, because you know, when they showed the laser, you know, on the skin, it's like, no, his skin is too unblemished and clean and pure to have been done with a treatment to remove a permanent tattoo. It doesn't. So, you know, it was one of these really well done fake tattoos that a lot of people get done these days. And then people think that these are real tattoos and they post them and they're like, oh, I posted, I had this tattoo idea and I had this tattoo here. Look at my goofy tattoo. And everyone's like, I can't believe you tattooed that on yourself when it's not even real. But basically, you know, Max says he's doing this because the fans ultimately rejected him. We're going back to the promo that happened last week. The fans rejected him, but always stood up for Hangman. So the only three letters he's ever going to bet on are M, J, and F, which is his name. You see? No longer AEW. MJF, that's his name. Adam Page arrives in an SUV with what do you call them? They're not bull horns. What do they call? Shit. What's the word? There's a word for it, right? When you have the longhorns. Is that what they are? The longhorns? I think there's another name for it. It's just slipping my mind now. But he pulls up to the building and heads straight to the ring. As commentary noticed, didn't take off, didn't change. He's not in gear. He didn't stretch, nothing. He just hits the ring and he beats the piss out of Aaron Solo for less than a minute and squashes him. And after the match, he grabs the mic, says he hates three things: running out of biscuits, English Ivy. If you don't follow his Blue Sky account, that was for the people who follow the Blue Sky account. And guys with leaky spray tans spitting in his face. That's MJF, by the way, referring to events that happened last week. And he's not leaving until MJF shows up for a beating. MJF shows up and he's got a bloody rag. He's wiping his hands on the bloody rag, tosses the bloody rag aside, and, basically says, I got to go. I'm not sure. I got to make sure that I'm ready for Revolution. So I'm going to go home, going to work my tuchus off, train my tuchus off. I love that word, tuchus. It's something that's not used enough, tuchus. I might actually try to bring that back. Maybe that's my goal in life. As aimless as it is, maybe my contribution is to usher in the return of the term tuchus into, groovy parlance. So he's about to leave and he says, oh, by the way, you should check on your friends. And that comes to the Tonytron where you have Christopher Daniels all covered, in blood, and he's stained on his blood. And I swear at first Daniels was laughing. He was smiling, like he was goofing off. And then someone said, oh, you're on. And he was like, "Arr." Then he sort of like, suddenly he ragdolls, it's like, I think so. I wanted to rewatch it and I didn't. I just thought of it as I'm recording right now. And I don't want to go watch it. I don't want to press pause and do it. But I swear that happened, right? Didn't it happen, right? So Paige runs backstage and eventually finds Daniels and gets the medics over, and then he starts raging to get at MJF. Don Callis is in the upper deck of the arena with Kyle Fletcher. Nice little setup, and they're up there to enjoy the next match, which involves Will Ospreay and Bryan Keith, and they do the tie-in here. See what I say? Everything has a story. Everything connects. There's a whole lot of canon here where they have Don Callis basically with Chris Jericho. Chris Jericho gets interviewed by Renee Paquette and basically saying, sure, first of all, talks about his match with Bandito and that he won and so on and so forth, which was a good match, by the way. It absolutely was Chris Jericho's best match in months. So, I really did enjoy it. He's talking about being, the best match of the year or whatever the fuck. I'm like, well, we can pump the brakes on that, but it was very good. But then Don Callis and Kyle Fletcher are in his locker room because essentially Don Callis is paying Chris Jericho to settle his to soften up Will Ospreay for the pay-per-view, which is something that Don Callis has done in the past and has been privy to. He's been hired and he's been, it all makes sense, right? That he'd do this. So, and Chris Jericho says, I spent my career at this point in my career, I don't have to help people anymore. I do it because I want to do things, right? So whatever. So they have that set up, and that's why we're getting Bryan Keith versus Will Ospreay, which was a good little match. It wasn't the tremendous mind-blowing affair that you typically expect when Will Ospreay's around, but certainly was not a bad match. Bryan Keith at some point in the match lands an exploder suplex in the corner, and he's working Ospreay's lower back. Will Ospreay lands a phenomenal forearm, an os cutter, and eventually wins the match with a Styles Clash hidden blade combo, which was the pace on that was tremendous. That's a quarter star in and about itself. Does the Styles Clash, gets right back up, goes to the corner, sets up, and Keith just like makes it to his knees and whomp. There's perfect timing on everything. Great stuff. I give it 3.25 stars if you're interested in that kind of stuff. So, and then after the match, Will Ospreay runs up to the little booth that Callis and Fletcher were in, and they start brawling into the audience. Security pulls them apart as the audience chants to let them fight. I have no issues with the segment. It was fine. Toni Storm and Mariah May. We have a recap of that, actually, of Toni Storm and Mariah May, including Mariah May's vicious attack on Collision, which I really liked because she attacked Toni Storm during the introduction, during like the cold open, which was something unusual. Good element of surprise. I like that. Mercedes Moné is backstage. She's cutting a promo on Momo Watanabe. It says, look, you were supposed to show up tonight to challenge me. Where are you? And instead she runs into Billy Starks. And Billy Starks has a cup in her hand. And Mercedes then flips the cup at Billy. So basically spilling water over Billy Starks. And, Mercedes goes after her a little bit. Meanwhile, Momo shows up from behind, and Billy says, "Watch your back" or something, and Watanabe blindsides Mercedes, and then Billy and Momo basically is there. Yeah, I accept the challenge. I will be there at Revolution. And they both just stand there, and Billy Starks looked really, really awkward. She just stood there smiling. I was like, okay, this is really fucking awkward. I guess it comes with experience, but maybe not the best use of Billy Starks' first appearance since becoming a Ring of Honor staple kind of thing. Maybe not the best way of doing it. I don't know. Not great. That leads us to the Outrunners defeating the Murder Machines. I thought the match was all right. Maybe a little mediocre. I hated the finish. Look, whatever happened in the match, I hated the finish, where basically Archer and Cage are basically they're just dominating the Outrunners, and Lance Archer is about to land the blackout. I think it was on Turbo Floyd, and then the Hurt Syndicate music hits, which distracts Lance Archer enough to drop Turbo Floyd and ignore the match so that Turbo Floyd can then take advantage of the opportunity to roll him up for the flash pin win. And I think this is so stupid because they had really set up the Murder Machines to be like this tag team of these two monsters just running in and devastating people. I think it takes away some luster. I think it takes away some of their fierceness. They're goofballs. They get distracted. And I know this is like a trope, but it's a trope I hate. I really don't like. I don't like the music plays. And then suddenly I completely forget the match and what I'm doing. It's like, I must focus on this. I'm a crow with a shiny object all of a sudden. Pea-brain shit. I don't know why they did this. I think it takes away so much from the Murder Machines. Now they just come across as goofballs. And ultimately, the Hurt Syndicate were right. We'll see how this develops, but I kind of think it made them look particularly dumb. Swerve hits the ring. Swerve Strickland. He's with Prince Nana, cuts a promo on his history as world champion. Even gets a little reference to Black History Month, ending up with him. So, and talking about how he made Black history. Good on him. I'm glad he did that. And he needs to get the gold back around his waist, but he has to finish up with Ricochet. Ricochet comes out to counter, and he says, "I don't know why you're coming for me. I'm done with you because winners don't chase losers," which is really fun. I like Ricochet so much in this thing. I don't think there's enough praise that's being heaped upon the heel work that he's been doing. It's really been tremendous. He's using his awkward personality to be this, this awkward little annoying dude who got lucky once and won't let anyone live it down. I think it's tremendous. But this all leads to Prince Nana, who has a contract in hand, saying that Tony Khan has made a match for Revolution. If Ricochet accepts it, Swerve versus Ricochet, and the winner gets a shot at the AEW World Championship, which Ricochet accepts because for the past few weeks he's been telling us that by the end of the year he's going to be a champion in AEW. So he's like, oh, well, there you go. So it all connects. It all makes sense. So he says, so, it all makes sense. He says that he's done with Swerve, but his overlying motivation of being a champion sort of takes precedence here. And he's like, okay, well, I'm ready to adjust myself here, essentially. So he accepts, they leave, but Nana stays in the ring, and he tells Swerve, no, wait, boss, don't go away. I got to talk to you. And basically he says, man, I've been helping you out so much. I've been taking so many bullets for you. But we got to refocus, and you got to get this title back. You got to start working on being a champion again, because otherwise I don't know how long. And you got to get my robe back. Protect my legacy, because otherwise I don't know how long I can keep this up with you, which is kind of shocking. Now people are like, oh, turn. It might just be, sure, but it might also just be, character development. Remember, a couple of weeks ago, Nana was saying to Swerve when he was cutting a promo on Ricochet, Nana was telling him, boss, why do you have to make this always so personal? It's not personal, it's just business. Let's go on and win championships. Because Nana is a manager. He gets a cut of the earnings of his protege. So if his protege is a champion, he gets a bigger cut. That's how it works. So it all makes sense to me. I don't know if this is as much a turn as a refocusing of Swerve's character. He told it himself. He told Swerve. He said, you got to focus. You got to become, once again, the most dangerous man in this company. You got to refocus, man. It's all very good, quite honestly. I really dug this. We get Hangman Page backstage being interviewed by Renee, and basically, he says MJF is gone, but I'm going to find him and I'm going to run him over with my car. Lots of attempted murders in AEW. No one ever gets charged, so if there's no consequences, just go right ahead. The Undisputed Kingdom trio of Adam Cole, Kyle O'Reilly, and Roderick Strong defeated Daniel Garcia and FTR in a fun match. I thought a good little match. There were some really high energy exchanges, like that really fun sequence where the guys are all landing moves on each other on the floor, like in really rapid succession, which was really cool. Well worked match. I enjoyed it. I didn't think it was anything all that special. The triple sharpshooter move into the pins, was what it was. And Adam Cole jackknife pins Daniel Garcia for a pin, securing a shot at the TNT title this Saturday on Collision. I give it 3 stars. I don't have much more to add. Then we have the whole Adam Copeland thing with the Death Riders, and that leads us to Harley Cameron defeating Deonna Purrazzo. It was all right. I gave it 2 3/4 stars. I mean, there's, can't say it enough. I like Harley Cameron. I like her a lot. I think she's over, which means she's going to get pushed. Well, not only do I think she's over, she is over, which means she's going to get pushed. She's going to get more TV time, which is normal. I think that she's picked up wrestling really, really quickly. She is clearly a fast learner. She made a joke about that, but I think she really is. I think she needs to do things where she doesn't punch above her weight, though. In the sense that don't try to do complex moves that you might not be ready to pull out on TV. Because there's a couple of times here that she did a couple of things where it's like, that didn't quite work out. But, when she's doing power moves, when she's doing suplexes, when she's very solid, she's got a lot of snap in what she's doing. But when she starts leaving her feet, when she starts trying to do aerial stuff, I'm like, this isn't quite connecting as much. So just got to be careful on that, because she doesn't have quite the working standard of AEW just yet. And if they try to have her do too many wild things, she's going to get exposed real fast. And that's going to work against her, because there is a higher working standard in AEW. And we have seen people lose a lot of luster because they didn't have the in-ring to back up what they were doing. And then that leads us to the ambulance leaving and the main event, which we've talked about. So that wraps it up. That wraps up today's review of AEW Dynamite, which again, I thought it was a good show, and they're doing fantastic work building to the pay-per-view. And I can't take anything away from that. They really are doing tremendous work building to the pay-per-view. They actually made the Death Rider's angle interesting for the first time in months. It's a good show. It was a good show. I think the wrestling wasn't all there all the time, but the main event was tremendous. So it's a good little trade-off. Here's a trade-off for you. Leave a like on the video, or a 5-star review on Apple Podcasts, or a 5-star rating on Spotify. If you want, join the YouTube channel at youtube.com/MrWarrenHayes and check out the streaming. I stream multiple times a week. Those are always a fun time. Otherwise, I will be back for the rest of you for another Mr. Warren Hayes Show podcast next Wednesday. There you go. So, listen, have a great rest of your week. Go watch some Randy Orton and get back to me. And I'll see you next time.